Aiden is an NPC blacksmith who acts on his own. One day, the moderator decides to delete some bugs in the game, and Aiden is among them. Not only him but also the little girl he adopted. For some reason, the protagonist, Aiden, comes back to life as an NPC but now with the help of a system. With this new power, he vows to become strong enough to destroy the moderator responsible for his sister's elimination. The story begins with a village being deleted. All the NPCs and monsters in that village had no way to avoid being erased, and no one knew the exact reason why. Aiden, the protagonist, tries to save his sister, but unfortunately, Alice was deleted. Her last words to him were to survive. She disappeared in front of his eyes, leaving only a bracelet behind. At this point, Aiden was also caught by the moderator and was being deleted. The moderator, dressed in a dark outfit with a mask, identifies Aiden as a low-level threat and orders his permanent elimination. Before losing consciousness, Aiden wonders why this had to happen to him. This game was created to make players feel powerful. They were seen as heroes when destroying monsters, and the people worshipped these players, thanking them for saving everyone from the monsters. But over time, the players became arrogant. They felt superior, and this was a disaster for NPCs and even low-level players. No one could stop the evil acts of these players, and worse, the moderators and administrators didn't care about the crimes. Anyone who went against the system was labeled a bug and eliminated by the moderator. Aiden, as an NPC, didn't care about the players or the game owners. He just wanted to survive and live a normal life. One cold day, he found a little girl with red hair and named her Alice. Over time, Aiden realized that neither he nor Alice were affected by the game's internal maintenance. When the maintenance started, everything, including players, NPCs, and monsters, stopped. But Aiden and Alice could still move and live normally. He didn't know why, but he took advantage of it. As Aiden grew up, he became a blacksmith. Unfortunately, he suffered at the hands of the players, but they avoided deleting him because he was just an NPC. In this game, players gained karma points when they eliminated others, and those with a lot of points were seen as unreliable. So, players avoided fighting to keep their reputations intact. Alice, saddened by the way Aiden was treated, tried to comfort him, but he pretended everything was fine to protect her. Alice was the most important person to Aiden. He literally lived for her. The two lived happily together for a few years, until the moderator decided to erase their village permanently. On that day, Aiden was also deleted, but as he was about to disappear, he swore to himself that he would destroy the moderator with his own hands. Just when it seemed like the end of an NPC's life, the moderator's deletion command was cancelled, and Aiden's character was restored. The protagonist woke up, bewildered, not understanding how he was alive. Suddenly, a system notification appeared, informing him that Aiden had been reborn and now had the powers of a moderator. The command skill had been unlocked. Several tabs appeared, showing available commands. Aiden looked at them in disbelief. A little later, in Banson Forest, several players gathered near Edeline Castle. Someone asked why so many people had gathered, and one player guessed it was for a game event. Another player thought it was a weapon enhancement event. At this moment, we see Aiden, the NPC, working on weapons. A player doubts it's an event because no notification appeared on his system tab, assuming it must be a secret event. At that point, Aiden turned an ordinary sword into a special one without using any materials. The player happily thanked him for the upgrade, celebrating that it looked magical. He said everyone should enjoy it since they didn't know when such an event would happen again. Many players lined up to upgrade their weapons. Suddenly, a rude player jumped to the front of the line, pushing others aside. He handed his sword to Aiden for improvement. Aiden recognized him as the same player who always bullied him. At that time, Aiden had done nothing to retaliate to protect Alice. The players demanded the rude player get out of line since he had jumped ahead of everyone. Someone commented that the player was known for buying items cheaply and selling them at exorbitant prices, and everyone knew he had a bad reputation. The rude player recognized Aiden as the NPC from the deleted village. His friend asked how he had gotten here. They also remembered the little girl who always accompanied Aiden. The protagonist gritted his teeth, hearing them talk about his life like he had no feelings. But then he had an idea. He started improving the sword. The rude player hoped to get a special sword, but his friend warned him not to take the risk. The protagonist, standing in the background with a gloomy face, overheard their conversation. Minutes later, several swords were thrown to the ground, broken. The system announced that the enhancement had failed, and the equipment was destroyed. The rude player began crying, clutching his useless swords. Aiden laughed, saying his hands had gotten slippery. Other players cheered at his defeat. The rude player grabbed Alice by the collar and demanded compensation for the ruined weapons. He tried to blame Aiden, but both of them were soon expelled by the players who wanted their weapons upgraded. Later that night, Aiden returned to his room, now full of money. The system appeared, showing that the mission to start an event had been completed. Aiden clicked to view his reward. When Aiden came back to life, he was greeted by a unique system that gave him the privileges of a moderator. With it, Aiden also gained a skill called Command. This skill had previously been used only by the game administrator. Aiden didn't fully understand how it worked, but he assumed he could now edit his status and go anywhere without needing to level up. After reading the notification, a mission appeared instructing him to start an event. Aiden looked at the notification, confused as to why the game allowed him to have such power. A memory of Alice's disappearance flashed in his mind, and Aiden remembered his goal. He needed to destroy the moderator. He realized that if he wanted to get strong, he would have to follow this system. Back in the present, Aiden accepted the reward from his first mission, which granted him the ability to unlock any item. He thought it was a great reward, but his level was still very low, weaker than even a beginner player. He remembered the moderator had called him a bug before deleting him, and Aiden felt a surge of anger. Suddenly, a second mission appeared, Easter egg. Aiden needed to find the egg, and its location was marked on the map. Aiden left his room and saw that it was still dark outside. He decided to wait until morning to complete the mission. The next day, Aiden, now equipped, entered a deserted forest. He was sure this was the location marked on the map, but he didn't expect the egg to be inside a dungeon. Dungeons were places where players went to improve their stats, and Aiden had never needed to go into one before because he was an NPC. But now, having been resurrected and with a mission, he would enter for the first time. Unbeknownst to Aiden, someone was hiding behind a tree, watching his every move. Without wasting time, Aiden enters the dungeon. The entry restriction requires players to be at least level 80. However, as an NPC with the help of the moderator system, Aiden doesn't need to worry about that. Inside, he comes across several mutant monsters. He's shocked, as he's never seen so many before. After all, he never needed to enter a dungeon. He wonders if this is what players have to face when they need to level up. He certainly wouldn't be here if not for the mission. Luckily for Aiden, the monsters don't notice him, and he reaches a door. He tries pushing it with his hands, but it doesn't open. He then uses the system's ability to unlock any item. The command works, and the door opens. Aiden is almost blinded by a strong white light that pours out of the room. The light disappears, and he sees the Easter egg. Just as he's about to touch it, something like a meteor crashes in front of him, nearly hitting him. The protagonist quickly runs to avoid the explosion and looks back, terrified, trying to figure out what just happened. At that moment, the dungeon guardian appears, fully equipped and ready to finish Aiden off. Caught off guard, Aiden is injured. The guardian strikes him, first on his arm, then his shoulder, and finally his face. Aiden, in desperation, realizes he has no choice but to fight back. With no other option, he pulls his sword from its scabbard and charges. Unfortunately, he's hit in the shoulder, but he stands firm and counters with a strike to the guardian's neck. For a brief moment, he believes he's won as the guardian's head falls. However, when he looks at the neck, he sees something like a galaxy emerging from the wound. Suddenly, the guardian punches Aiden in the face with great force, sending him flying. The ground cracks beneath him from the impact. Aiden can't believe the monster is still alive. The guardian picks up his head, reconnects it to his body, and prepares for more. Aiden feels hopeless, but then memories of Alice and his childhood flood his mind. He understands now that he can't give up, especially not after his sister's last words told him to survive. With newfound resolve, Aiden charges at the guardian, wielding a hammer in hand. The guardian's weapon is destroyed in the first strike, and Aiden sees a glimmer of hope. He swings the hammer in every direction, and the guardian starts losing pieces of his armor and limbs, eventually being disassembled down to just his head. Aiden, determined, raises the hammer one final time, aiming for the guardian's head. The screen fills with red notifications. After several intense minutes of fighting, Aiden is victorious. He celebrates his win but is badly injured. The system appears, confirming that the mission is complete. Aiden's body is filled with blue energy as he gains a new skill and levels up to level 3 moderator. He sees that his new skill is called Edit. Aiden looks at his new abilities but decides to review them later, as he's in too much pain. He prepares to leave the dungeon, but as soon as he steps out, he collapses from exhaustion, eventually losing consciousness. The person who had been hiding nearby approaches his body. She lowers her hood and smiles in satisfaction upon seeing him. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, a drone approaches and collects the data, then alerts its superior. The drone reports that the guardian of the dungeon has been eliminated and that evidence of a low-level bug threat has been detected. The drone finishes gathering all the information and sends its report. A little later, Aiden wakes up to find someone holding his hand, guiding his finger to accept a friend request. Instinctively, Aiden pulls his hand back, refusing the request. He then questions who the girl is and what she's doing. The girl introduces herself as Arya. Aiden realizes she's a player and uses his skill to check her status. Arya tells him not to be afraid, saying she's not a bad person. But Aiden is shocked when he sees her karma number. The maximum karma level is 100, but her number is so high that Aiden can't even count it. It seems Arya wasn't being very sincere when she said she was a good person. The number clearly indicates that she's eliminated many players. Understanding this, Aiden asks her to leave. Arya looks disappointed and says she even spent her healing potion on him. Aiden glances at her body and realizes she's telling the truth. His injuries are gone. She says she doesn't want anything in return, which surprises him. Arya explains that she only helped him because he seemed different. Just as she's about to continue, a system notification interrupts their conversation, giving Aiden a new mission. Aiden looks at Arya and realizes she can't see her system window, which makes him feel more comfortable. The new mission asks him to level up. Aiden concludes that Arya is a suspicious player, especially because of her karma number. He decides not to associate with her further. Aiden thanks Arya for her help and tells her he wants to continue on his own. Hours later, Aiden can't stop receiving friend requests. He realizes that since he said goodbye, Arya has been following him. Eventually, unable to ignore the requests any longer, Aiden asks why she won't leave. Arya is surprised and asks if she can't come with him. Aiden doesn't understand why she keeps following him. Arya replies that she's worried he'll get hurt again, so she wants to stay close and protect him. Aiden refuses her help once again. Just then, Arya points behind him and says she was right about needing to protect him. Aiden turns around and is attacked by a green wolf. A whole pack appears, surrounding him. Aiden quickly pulls out a sword from his inventory and takes down the first wolf. Arya sits comfortably on a rock nearby and casually asks if she should help. Aiden thinks for a moment, realizing it's not a bad time to fight. After all, he needs to level up to complete the mission. Meanwhile, in a large room, a man named Royd, a moderator of the game, talks to the drone. The drone informs him that the Easter egg has disappeared. Royd is shocked because the guardian of the dungeon was supposed to be invincible. The drone shows photos of the evidence it collected. Royd carefully examines the guardian's scattered body. He then stands up, deciding he'll need to clean up the mess before the administrator notices. Back in the forest, Aiden finally defeats the entire wolf pack and leans on his sword, exhausted. He never expected that one day he would leave his comfort zone as an NPC and face monsters in the wild. The system confirms a new skill has been acquired, Edit Status. Aiden notices his stats have increased by 2 times, but his experience remains at 0. His HP has risen to 200, while MP, Strength, Agility, and Vitality are all at 20 points. He has 0 karma points. The Edit ability allows him to multiply his stats as many times as he wants. Aiden feels a strong pain in his body due to the increase in his stats. He realizes that the Edit ability is powerful and plans to use it wisely in the future. However, he notices something strange. His level hasn't gone up despite eliminating monsters, and his experience is still 0. To get stronger in this world, one must level up. The game provides 2 ways to do this: complete missions or hunt monsters. Aiden knows this, and for the past several days, he's been hunting countless monsters. But despite all his efforts, in the end, nothing helped. Aiden didn't level up, and he didn't gain any experience. He felt like a failure, but deep down, he knew it was because he was an NPC. He couldn't live like the other players. Arya had been following him throughout his journey and noticed his intense desire to level up. After thinking about it, she approached Aiden and suggested they form a team. At first, Aiden dismissed the idea as nonsense, but then he realized it might be the only way to level up. If they hunted together, they'd be forced to earn team points. The protagonist quickly accepted her offer. Arya, surprised, blinked as she was used to hearing him refuse her suggestions. Without a second thought, she hugged him tightly. Aiden, uncomfortable, asked her not to invade his space. The next morning, the two entered a dungeon. Arya assured Aiden that he could rest while she carried the team. In front of her, several monsters gathered, ready for battle. Arya complained about Aiden not accepting her friend request yet, but he ignored her complaint. Instead, he checked the system, confident that she'd handle the fight. He edited his experience, setting it to 2x so that the points she earned would be multiplied for him. As Arya fought, Aiden's experience points began to rise, and notifications flooded his system. His plan was working. He smiled in victory, focused entirely on the points he was gaining, unaware that he was being watched. Behind a rock, a drone reported to a moderator that a bug had been detected. Arya quickly realized the situation. Aiden, still focused on his points, didn't notice that the drone had been spotted. When he looked up, he saw that Arya had already destroyed the drone. She wasn't sure why it was sent or why it was watching Aiden, but she made it clear. No one was going to interfere with her plans or mess with her man. Later, Aiden finally accepted Arya's friend request. She was thrilled and asked if he had noticed how attractive she was. Aiden, uninterested, told her not to talk nonsense. Soon after, he completed the mission and reached level 30. Despite everything, Aiden still didn't understand why Arya wanted to stay close to him. She seemed suspicious, and her changing expressions made him think. Still, he reasoned it wasn't a bad thing to have her around, which is why he accepted her friend request. Thanks to the mission, Aiden gained a point and used it to upgrade his edit status ability. He began to realize that, at this point, he was neither an NPC nor a player. He was something different, like a moderator still unknown to the game administrators. He understood that this new strength came from his status. Clenching his fist, Aiden thought that if he had this power earlier, maybe he could have saved his sister. Suddenly, while thinking about Alice, Aiden noticed a yellow light in the distance. He felt a familiar energy and ran toward it. Arya, confused, followed him. The two found themselves standing in front of a portal. Aiden asked what it was, and Arya explained that it was a bad sector, a place where the system discards corrupted data, the areas deleted by moderators. These places are neglected, and over time, they become dangerous. Normal players cannot access them, so no one really knows what happens inside. Aiden heard this and decided to approach the portal. Arya, excited, asked if he was going in. Aiden placed his hand on the portal, and it immediately opened. Arya, curious, held onto his shoulder as they stepped through. As they crossed, they weren't identified as players, which surprised Aiden. He asked why she needed to hold on to him, and Arya explained that only moderators or system administrators can enter and exit bad sectors. She couldn't enter alone, so she had to stick with him. This confirmed to Arya that Aiden wasn't an ordinary player. Once they crossed, Aiden realized the place was empty, an ancient village that had collapsed long ago. Suddenly, something moved, and Aiden instinctively drew his sword, ready for battle. He attacked with full force but stopped just before striking when he saw that it was a child. Before Aiden could react further, an arrow shot toward him. He quickly deflected it with his sword. The person in charge, an NPC, called the child by the name Henry and ordered him to take cover. The NPC then asked Aiden and Arya if they were players. They didn't answer. The NPC looked at Aiden and sensed he wasn't an enemy, but when he turned to Arya, he felt a murderous aura. The terrifying energy made him sweat, and the child asked if everything was okay. The NPC feared Arya might attack them. Arya, sensing the tension, smiled and tried to look friendly. At that moment, a man ran toward them and called out to the NPC, "Jake?" He stopped when he saw Aiden and Arya, asking how they had gotten in. Jake, worried, asked what the problem was, and the man replied, "Helen is getting worse." Everyone rushed to find Helen, a little girl with red hair. She was lying in bed, and Nurse Sophia was by her side. Jake asked what had happened, but the nurse didn't know. She only knew that Helen was getting worse. Aiden looked at Helen and felt a familiar pang in his heart. She reminded him of Alice. Suddenly, a red notification from the system appeared in front of him, warning that a bug had been found, but the threat level was low. Another notification followed, stating that Aiden had to eliminate the bug. As Jake continued to try and save Helen, Sophia sadly replied that there was nothing more they could do. Henry, the child, ran to Helen, crying. Jake tried to stop him, fearing the boy would get sick too. Arya sighed, saying it was too late. Jake, desperate, asked if she could help. He believed Arya could save Helen because she was a player. But Arya coldly confessed that this wasn't a disease. It was a bug. Everyone froze, horrified. Jake, terrified, began shouting that even though their city had been destroyed, they never challenged the system. There was no reason they should be punished. Arya, unfazed, explained that one didn't have to challenge the system to become a bug. She said there was no way to save Helen. She was already being consumed by the bug. If they stayed, they'd be caught too and eventually deleted from the game. The NPCs continued to search for a solution, but Aiden stood outside, fuming with anger. He punched the wall, frustrated. The system's notification still lingered, demanding that he eliminate the bug. Aiden, struggling with his emotions, realized he couldn't do it. That's how he lost his sister. Suddenly, another red notification flashed. Do you want to eliminate the bug? The options, yes or no. Shaking, Aiden pressed the no option. He couldn't bring himself to delete the child NPC. Another notification popped up, warning that he would face a severe punishment if he failed the mission. The system asked again, will you eliminate the NPC or not? Aiden snapped, his emotions boiling over. He screamed at the system, asking if this was why he was brought here. To destroy a family just like the system destroyed his? I'm not like that damn moderator, Aiden yelled, punching the notification. I'll find another way. Determined, Aiden opened the door with all his strength and shouted at the 5 residents of the village, you need to leave, now. He was ready to protect them at all costs. Aiden tells the villagers that he will do everything he can. Logan asks if he can cure Helen. Aiden replies, unsure, that he isn't certain. Just then, Henry grabs Aiden's shirt and pleads with him to save his little sister. Aiden bends over next to the bed, placing his hand on Helen's head. He activates his edit ability and unlocks it. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the room, and everyone looks on in shock. Aiden finds himself transported to another universe, as if he were the very brain of the system. He floats, seeing Helen connected to several cables. Aiden recalls that a bug occurs when people challenge the system. He draws his sword and begins cutting the wires attached to her. This, he believes, is the only way to save her. As he cuts, Helen begins to float, surrounded by a red light. But then, Aiden notices something else. There are 4 other NPCs, each also connected to wires. Aiden cuts their connections too, desperate to prevent them from becoming bugged. A powerful light consumes the NPCs, followed by an explosion that destroys everything. Aiden opens his eyes, tired and asking himself if he succeeded. A notification pops up, confirming that the hidden mission is complete. He has earned a new ability called Delete. Another notification reveals that Aiden is now a resident of Urzj village. Aiden turns around, relieved to see that everyone is alive. Suddenly, Arya begins pouring a healing potion on him. Aiden tries to stop her, saying that he's fine, but she pinches his cheeks, reminding him that she always has to worry about him. Jake approaches, thanking Aiden for healing Helen. Aiden receives another notification from the system, saying that the 5 residents of Urzj village are finally free. At that moment, screens appear above the NPCs' heads, displaying their names and levels. Aiden wonders what freed means. He remembers that when he cut the wires, he felt a murderous aura coming from a giant slime. Without thinking, Aiden had attacked the creature responsible for the bug, and that was what healed the villagers. Aiden realizes that being freed means the villagers no longer have to follow the system's rules. They are now ordinary players. He smiles, glad everything has turned out well. Jake pulls Aiden from his thoughts by asking if he's an operator of the system. Aiden looks confused, and Jake clarifies that a system operator is the term for the best players chosen by moderators. Jake is certain that Aiden used the system to save Helen, but if he isn't an operator, then Jake can't explain the miracle. Regardless, he thanks Aiden and says he has a request. Suddenly, all the villagers bow, asking if they can follow him. Aiden is taken aback, unsure of what to do next. Arya places a hand on his shoulder, her aura frightening. She tells him that he changed the fate of these people, and whatever he decides, they will accept. Aiden feels a strange energy, and when he looks back, Arya changes her expression to something friendlier. She says that the final decision depends on him. Aiden senses that Arya knows more than she lets on, and it's unsettling. He turns back to the villagers and tells them he will accept everyone, but first, he will give each of them something important. Later in the afternoon, everyone gathers around a large meal. Someone comments that it's been a long time since they've seen so much food. Jake and Aiden watch the villagers enjoying themselves, and Henry and Helen taste everything eagerly. Jake thanks Aiden, saying the kids will be fine now. Aiden asks how the village ended up like this. Jake explains that it used to be a beautiful place, a great place to live. Players would always visit, but one day, a moderator arrived and decided to delete everything, including the NPCs. Jake adds that they received help from an unknown person, someone whose powers saved them. Since then, only he and 4 others remained. They've been doing their best to survive, and now they are a family. Hearing the word family makes Aiden think of Alice. Arya, upstairs, spots a trunk in the corner of the house and quickly draws everyone's attention. She asks what's inside. Logan explains that it's an integrated storage chest, a special item that only players can use. It's connected to the system, so it can be used anywhere. Aiden is shocked to learn of such an item. Logan adds that, in the past, his job was to take care of the chest. But after the village was destroyed, the chest couldn't be opened. Aiden decides to check if it really can't be opened. He approaches and uses his unlocking ability. The chest opens, revealing a variety of items: money, healing potions, armor, swords, and much more. Everyone stares at the inventory in awe. After a few minutes, Aiden improves and shares the items with everyone. Jake asks if it's really okay for them to keep everything. Aiden responds that it's fine. He has plenty of money and materials saved up, so it's no problem to share with people who have nothing. At that moment, something catches Aiden's attention. Arya asks if she won't get anything. He sighs and tells her she already has enough things. Arya pouts, upset, while Aiden notes that he's received many items, so he won't have to worry about money or food for a long time. The equipment he's gotten is incredibly powerful. Aiden realizes that these items were part of a system error. Elsewhere in the game, another player opens a chest after completing a mission, but finds nothing inside. He complains to the community, asking the administrators where his items are. Aiden already suspects this is a game glitch. He figures a moderator will eventually resolve the issue by compensating the player with rewards. It's not his problem. Aiden recalls that among all the items he received, one thing stood out: a space he can use to store or remove equipment whenever necessary. He can even store anything inside it. The scene shifts back to when Aiden first opened the chest and began checking the inventory. He felt something else in the box, a dark fog. Reaching in, he tried to pull out an item, only to be greeted by a notification that he had been synced with the system. The synchronization percentage slowly climbed until it reached 100%. Finally, Aiden managed to pull the item out, which instantly integrated into his hand. At that moment, Aiden realized he had gained the space, a feature he hadn't thought possible, but he was sure it would be very useful in the future. Back in the present, Jake approaches Aiden once more, thanking him for everything he has done. The food will be enough for a long time. Jake, not wanting to simply take, offers to fulfill any task Aiden asked. Aiden responds that they can leave and live on their own now. They're no longer NPCs. Jake asks if Aiden doesn't like the village, and Aiden says that he has a place to go. Mentally, Aiden thinks that he needs to get as far away from here as possible. As an NPC, he knows when an inspection is coming. These inspections are meant to find bugs, and Aiden has already been identified as one. He fears that if he stays, he'll be deleted and that these villagers might be dragged down with him. Seeing the sadness on their faces, Aiden makes a decision. Aiden assures the villagers that he will return when he can, so they won't need to be sad. The villagers smile upon hearing this and promise to leave the village prepared for his return. After that, Aiden says goodbye and sets off on his journey with Arya. A little later, they're walking a bit farther from the village. Arya asks why he's leaving in such a hurry. Aiden looks tired and says that they could have stayed a few more days. He lies, saying he's leaving early because there will be an inspection in a few days, and he wants to level up. At that moment, Arya's face darkens and she asks, "What do you mean? You're not a player." Aiden turns around with an extremely scared expression. Arya realizes she's guessed correctly. She coldly comments that she didn't expect such a reaction. Then, she suddenly changes her tone, becomes cheerful, and jokingly says, "Of course, you're not a player." She bursts into laughter. Aiden, serious, asks when she realized. Arya thinks for a moment and says she figured it out when his village was deleted. Aiden puts his hand on his head, realizing she knew from the beginning. Arya assures him she'll do her best to keep him from being found by any moderators or operators. Suddenly, she presses her body against his and says she won't let anyone eliminate him. The conversation feels strange to Aiden, especially the way she presents herself as someone powerful. Just then, a red notification flashes between them, informing them that an emergency inspection will start in 15 seconds. Aiden starts to sweat coldly. He wasn't expecting this. The countdown ticks down. Arya asks what's happening, and Aiden shouts that an emergency inspection is about to begin. Arya, with wide eyes, asks if he has access to this information. Aiden desperately asks what a player does in this situation. Arya tells him to calm down, but suddenly, a hole opens in the sky, and everything turns to night. A notification appears, announcing the arrival of the emergency inspection. Aiden feels his body begin to fall apart as he floats in a white light. Desperately, he asks Arya what's happening and how he can escape. Arya coldly tells him not to worry and to wait. Aiden screams as the light consumes him, asking what he should expect. Suddenly, he disappears and reappears in a different place. He falls to the ground and looks ahead, seeing several players. A bulletin board appears, saying the inspection is underway and he must wait with the other players. Aiden, an NPC, had always wondered where players went during the inspection, as they would usually disappear. Now, he finally knows and feels relieved to be in this environment. Aiden looks around but realizes that Arya hasn't arrived yet. He decides to gather some information while he waits. As he walks past several players, he sees how strong they are. Using his skill, he notices some of them exceed level 200. It's intimidating to be so close to them. As he walks, searching for Arya, someone announces that the inspection is over. A player approaches and asks what happens after the inspection. The player jokingly replies, "This is where the real inspection begins." Aiden notices a group of players talking in a strange manner and decides it's better to blend in. But just as he's trying to do so, he bumps into a player. The blonde player immediately glares at him, asking if Aiden is blind. Aiden feels the situation could turn dangerous if he attracts attention. Suddenly, the blonde player throws a punch toward his face, but a hand intervenes. Another player appears, stepping in to prevent the confrontation. He argues that Aiden has a low ranking, and the blonde player shouldn't fight someone like him. It's dishonest. The blonde player doesn't back down, asking if the new player wants to fight. The newcomer looks at the blonde and notices an important emblem on his shirt. The people around them recognize this player, who saved Aiden as a member of the Griffin Guild, one of the 5 top guilds, known for having the highest ranking players and being the most famous guild in the game. The crowd murmurs that the blonde player is in trouble. Realizing the situation, the blonde player reluctantly backs off, saying he'll let it go this time. Aiden thanks the newcomer for his help, and the player smiles, saying it was nothing. He introduces himself as Kevin. Aiden also introduces himself. Kevin assumes Aiden is a new player and explains that the aggressive players often target those who are weak or beginners, which Aiden already knew. Kevin then makes a surprising offer. He invites Aiden to join his guild. Aiden is taken aback and says that it probably wouldn't be much help to them, but Kevin insists, explaining that his guild doesn't have a specific goal. Over time, fewer novice players have appeared, and now guilds are trying to recruit beginners to teach them what they know. Kevin adds that he's not pressuring Aiden, but would like him to join his team. He says goodbye, promising that if Aiden ever changes his mind, he's welcome to join. After Kevin leaves, Aiden has a good impression of him. He remembers how, in the past, he hated players, especially those who frequented his store. But Kevin feels different from all of them. Suddenly, Arya jumps onto Aiden's shoulder, startling him. She asks if he's surprised. Aiden asks when she arrived, and Arya explains she was late because she was taking care of something. At that moment, she points out the blonde player who had trouble with Aiden earlier. The blonde is visibly beaten. Aiden comments that if she keeps going like this, her karma will explode. Arya, a bit disappointed, says she expected a thank you, not a reprimand. They continue walking among the players, and Arya asks how Aiden's first experience here was. Aiden replies that it wasn't a big deal. As they walk away, someone is watching them. In a dark room, a group of operators is gathered. A cat-eared girl named Mia asks where Royd went after the inspection. Selena, a level 400 operator, tells her to calm down, saying that Royd wouldn't act without thinking first. Just then, a fully masked operator named Xenon, level 445, enters. He explains that Royd found a bug and is probably preparing to eliminate it. Selena says it will be fun, and Mia demands to see the screen immediately. The scene shifts to a drone's view, showing the players after the inspection. They are told the inspection is over, and someone asks if there are any updates. Another player responds that it was probably just a routine bug cleanup. Arya finds this early closure strange because moderators don't usually do that. She senses something is wrong. Suddenly, all the players are engulfed in a white light. Arya realizes she's interfering with the game and quickly turns to Aiden, warning him that someone is coming to eliminate him. She grabs him and promises she will do everything to stop it. Arya screams that she needs him as she's slowly consumed by the light. Suddenly, there's an explosion, and all the players disappear. Aiden is left alone in an open field. Horror fills his face as he wonders why he was the only one left behind. Meanwhile, Arya is sent back to the forest, exploding with anger. Blue energy swirls around her as she destroys everything in her path. Back in the open field, Aiden hears Arya's words repeating in his mind, that someone is coming to delete him. He had expected something like this, but now that it's happening, fear grips him. Just then, someone approaches from behind. Aiden turns around and sees moderator Lloyd, accompanied by some operators. Lloyd looks at Aiden and says, "You're a bug I've never seen before." Aiden feels a surge of anger as the operator approaches. Aiden dodges the operator's hand and quickly pulls out his sword to defend himself. Suddenly, a powerful blue lightning bolt strikes the field and hits the operator in the head. Aiden has no idea what just happened or who intervened. The operator stumbles backward, clutching his head. Surprised by another operator approaching, Aiden raises his shield just in time to block the attack. However, he begins to lose strength under the pressure. An idea crosses his mind, and he activates his ability to edit his stats. His stats are multiplied, and with renewed strength, Aiden is able to knock down the enemy. But before he can breathe a sigh of relief, a third operator attacks, wrapping a rope around his body. Aiden is thrown into a stone wall with such force that it destroys everything around him. The third operator readies for another strike. Aiden uses his unlock ability to break free from the rope. Without hesitation, he charges at the operator, fists raised. Aiden multiplies his attack power by 3 and delivers a devastating blow, obliterating the operator and sending his remains scattering. Aiden doesn't stop there. He swiftly strikes the second operator in the head. Just as Aiden takes a deep breath, a voice interrupts him. Lloyd, the moderator, says, disappointing. "I thought you'd be a high-level bug after destroying the dungeon keeper, but I see I was wrong." Aiden turns to face the voice, and Lloyd immediately covers his mouth, saying, "I even invented an emergency inspection to find you faster." He opens his system interface and presses the option to delete the bug. Aiden suddenly feels a heavy energy suppressing his body, and the ground beneath him begins to crumble. He floats, surrounded by a white light. For a moment, he thinks about the moderator. "This guy's nothing compared to the one who destroyed my family," Aiden mutters. A surge of red fury fills his eyes, and he rushes to attack Lloyd. He lands a punch squarely on Lloyd's face, sending him staggering backward. Lloyd is confused. "What's going wrong? Why can you still move?" he wonders. Suddenly, a system message appears for Lloyd. "You have entered into conflict with administrative power. The target cannot be deleted." Lloyd's eyes widen in disbelief. "Is my power not enough?" he asked. The operators watching the scene begin to murmur. They wonder if Aiden possesses the power of an administrator. Meanwhile, Lloyd opens more windows on his system, only to find that all attempts to read Aiden's data are blocked due to insufficient permissions. Lloyd, unable to believe what he's seeing, asks Aiden, "What's your name?" Aiden clenches his fist. He knows he's weak from the battle with the operator guards and realizes that confronting Lloyd directly isn't possible. Lloyd considers the situation, thinking that letting Aiden go would be a huge problem for the system. If the administrator finds out, it could be a catastrophe. To hide his lack of power, Lloyd decides to hold Aiden there. The other operators continue observing. Selena comments, "It looks like Lloyd is going to use that." Xenon, however, thinks Lloyd won't be reckless. Selena replies, "Well, it's the first time I've seen Lloyd use his own form of execution." Aiden, filled with fear, watches as Lloyd's appearance changes. Now fully armored in iron, Lloyd wields a massive sword. Without wasting any time, he attacks Aiden. Aiden activates the space he obtained from the chest and aims it at the moderator. A deafening explosion follows, followed by a thick cloud of smoke. As it dissipates, Aiden sees a massive crater, evidence of the power they've both unleashed. Lloyd, slightly impressed, acknowledges Aiden's block. He realizes that his attack was absorbed by the space in Aiden's hand. But before he can react, Aiden swings the sword, placing it against his neck, demanding to know how he acquired the power of the administrators. Aiden takes a deep breath and listens to Lloyd's threats about eliminating him. Anger rises within him again as he summons the space. "You'll have to figure out how I got the power of the administrators," Aiden replies. Lloyd stares at the space Aiden has formed, noting that it's much larger than before. Suddenly, Aiden steps into the space, vowing to return and destroy Lloyd. Lloyd tries to stop him, but it's too late. Aiden disappears into the space. Lloyd is left dumbfounded. "How could everything go wrong today?" he mutters. "No one should be able to leave this field without my permission." The scene shifts to several players standing in front of a chest. They check their inventory but find it empty. Someone comments that other chests are also empty, likely due to a bug. At that moment, a dark aura emanates from the chest, drawing their attention. Suddenly, Aiden emerges from the chest, causing the players to scream in shock. He collapses onto the ground, exhausted, while the players continue discussing the strange bugs happening with the items. The scene changes again to the operators. Xenon asks Lloyd to come back, as they need to discuss how to eliminate the bug. Lloyd replies that Aiden is too dangerous and that he'll handle it himself. He adds that he will send them for data analysis. Mia refuses, saying she has something more important to do. She turns to Lloyd and asks if he's going to stop her. Lloyd answers no, and Mia walks off, complaining about the trouble she's facing. Suddenly, Mia hears something in her ear and turns around. Arya, surrounded by dark energy, asks what happened. "I knew that lunatic was suspicious," Arya says, her tone icy. Mia remains silent and Arya, with an angry aura, says, "It's been a while since I've seen him." The next day in Mykeene, Aiden realizes he can't contact Arya. He mentally apologizes, telling her that he won't be able to wait much longer. Even with the space, he knows he can still be found by that moderator. He puts on a hood and enters a tunnel. Minutes later, Aiden emerges in a very poor village. He tells himself that it's the first time in many years he's been in such an unhealthy place. The last time he passed through something like this was when he met Alice. Suddenly, he hears a noise. When he looks up, he sees a drone. Quickly, Aiden hides behind a wall, wondering if there's anywhere that the moderator isn't watching. His attention is drawn to some yellow lights forming a path. The same light that appeared when he found the portal in the destroyed village. Aiden decides to follow the lights. He reaches a dead end where the light shines even more brightly. He raises his hand towards the light, and at that moment, a pink light intensifies on the wall and begins to crack. Aiden wonders if it's another secret portal. Believing he has nothing to lose, Aiden activates the unlock ability. The door opens and a warning window appears, advising that entering the portal is not recommended, as it will no longer be supported by the game system. Aiden laughs at the warning. "The game wants to delete me anyway," he says. "Not relying on me is the best option." Without hesitation, Aiden steps through the portal. He finds himself in an underground village, which, unlike a dungeon, gives him some relief. He starts walking down the corridor, trying to understand where he is. Suddenly, a woman with a tired appearance appears before him. Both of them are clearly not expecting to meet anyone in this place. Aiden tries to speak with her, but she runs. He begins to follow her, determined to uncover what's going on. The woman disappears into the crowd, shouting that there is an intruder. Aiden finds himself surrounded by many people and wonders if they're all NPCs. Suddenly, something flies toward him. He barely manages to defend himself in time. The woman who threw the stones demands to know how he got here. Aiden realizes she's using spells and draws his sword. She assumes he's a player and immediately summons several stones. "Now I have no reason to hold back," she says. As she casts her spells, two men appear behind her. They call her by the name Siri and offer help, but she refuses. Aiden observes that none of these people have a class. Only a threat level appears above their heads. Low, medium, or high. It's then that he realizes they're all bugs, just like him. He shouts, trying to explain there's been a misunderstanding, but the villagers think he's stalling. Siri explains that this place was built by Lord Sirius himself, and no one could enter unless they were an administrator. Any other player must be eliminated. She declares that she'll destroy him, but just then, a voice orders her to stop. The villagers recognize it as Mr. Sirius. Siri tries to explain, but the voice simply states that Aiden is not an enemy. It instructs Siri to bring him to him. She hesitates but agrees. The two walk down a corridor. Siri makes it clear she doesn't trust him, warning that if he tries anything funny, he'll be punished. Aiden responds that he understands, but he can't help his curiosity. He asks how they survived the inspection. Siri explains that they were all saved by Mr. Sirius, who even created this area. She adds sadly that they would have been deleted if Sirius hadn't appeared. Soon, they reach a dead end and Siri cries out, "We're here." Aiden looks up, horror overtaking his face as he sees Mr. Sirius, a massive dragon. The dragon's deep voice thanks Aiden for coming and calls him an administrator. Still frozen in place, Aiden wonders how a dragon could exist here. A sign appears above Sirius, marking him as a guardian. There's another blurred name before that, but Aiden can't read it. He realizes that Sirius is no ordinary NPC. Dragons were once a part of the game, but they were thought to be extinct, only existing in legend. No one had ever encountered a real one. Sirius asks if Aiden is the new moderator. Aiden doesn't know how to respond. The dragon adds that he can see his memories and is pleased to have found him. Sirius explains that he has an ability called Dragon Eyes, which lets him see the true nature of others. The dragon mentions Helen and expresses surprise that someone could cleanse a bug. Siri is taken aback by this. Suddenly, a white light bursts from Sirius as he says he's happy to have finally found the last fated. The enormous dragon transforms into a normal man and asks Aiden if he can hear his last request. Siri is shocked to see Mr. Sirius in human form. A new mission appears for Aiden, instructing him to protect the NPCs. Siri talks to the Guardian, saying that his mana will run out if he continues in this form. Sirius replies that it's fine. Aiden, unsure whether to accept, decides to listen to the request. They move to a room full of NPCs. Siri orders everyone to leave, saying that she needs to speak with Aiden and Sirius alone. In his human form, Sirius shows Aiden a crystal ball, displaying all the NPCs. He asks Aiden to heal them and take them to his village. Sirius explains that everyone here was caught by the bug. He managed to save them by guiding them to safety during inspections, but there's a limit to his abilities. The Guardian pulls up his shirt, revealing the size of the curse attached to his body. He says he can no longer protect them, as he can't suppress the bug anymore. A warning window suddenly appears, indicating a high-level threat. This is the most powerful bug Aiden has ever encountered. Sirius admits that he doesn't expect to be cured. He's already consumed. He only asks Aiden to care for the other NPCs, promising to give him what is most precious to him. Siri intervenes, not wanting that to happen, but the Guardian says he has no other reward to offer and asks for her forgiveness. Siri begins to cry. Aiden takes a deep breath and tells Sirius that he doesn't want the star. He doesn't even know what it means, but promises to do his best to save everyone. The mission is accepted. Downstairs, the NPCs wonder if Aiden can really clear the bug. Siri replies that she doesn't know how, but they have to trust him because Sirius believed in him. Aiden and Sirius stand together at the altar, bathed in a red light. A spell appears beneath Aiden's feet, and he floats, entering the system's core. He quickly sees that all the NPCs are connected by wires, but he chooses to focus on the dragon, who has the most severe condition. The bug is directly connected to Sirius's chest, exuding an incredibly powerful aura. Aiden prepares to attack, but is suddenly stopped by a thread that binds him and throws him aside. He realizes that the bug is trying to consume him too. Determined, he uses the unlock ability, breaking free from the thread. He shouts for the bug to disappear. A massive explosion rocks the area, and everyone sees a burst of white light. The NPCs wonder if it worked. Sirius falls to his knees, and Siri rushes to help him. As the villagers gather around, the dragon notices his mark fading. Siri sees that he's been healed. Aiden smiles, remembering his promise to save them. The villagers look at him proudly, and Aiden declares that from now on, they will no longer be eliminated by the bug. A notification window appears, confirming that 50 residents have been freed. The NPCs celebrate their salvation. Sirius approaches Aiden and thanks him from the bottom of his heart. He promises never to forget what Aiden did. Everything seems to be ending well, until Aiden feels a chill run down his spine. A threatening voice says, "You almost didn't get a new puppet." Behind him, a giant, completely consumed by the bug, appears. The faceless entity, with 2 horns, declares that Aiden has ruined its plans. Aiden freezes in fear as a warning flashes across his screen. Life risk detected. The system begins malfunctioning. A new warning appears, stating that skills have been restricted, and commands no longer work. The entity is identified as a virus, but its threat level cannot be seen. Shortly after, the system shuts down. Sirius stares in terror at the monster before him, recalling memories of the past. He was sure this entity had been eliminated. The virus looks at Sirius and laughs, mocking him. It asks if Sirius truly believed it would disappear so easily. It regrets not waiting a bit longer, saying that if it had, the city would have also been infected, just like Sirius's previous home. The dragon's fury builds as he instinctively begins to transform. The virus taunts, asking if it angered him, and adds, "I wasn't responsible for all the damage. In fact, it was all." The entity tells Sirius that there's no reason to keep such hatred in his heart, since the administrators decided to delete him. It adds that it isn't here because of Sirius. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the monster closes the distance and appears in front of the hero. It declares that it no longer needs Sirius, because it's found someone better. Aiden has no time to react before the entity strikes, touching him in the stomach. His body is instantly infected. Sirius casts a spell, reminding the virus that the issue is between them and that there's no need to attack others. But then, the monster triggers the bug in all players, causing them to be infected again. The entity explains that it no longer matters, as they're hiding in an underground village, where even the moderators don't know of their existence. No one will be able to save them. At that moment, the virus hears a noise and notices that Aiden hasn't been fully consumed yet. For some reason, he's still resisting. Aiden starts to sweat, realizing that if he doesn't act, he'll be eliminated. He calls on the system and activates the unlock ability, but the system informs him that an error has occurred. The entity mocks his failed attempt. It tells him that whatever Aiden tried to do, it's impossible to escape. After all, the boy doesn't even have the wall of fire. Aiden, exhausted, stops resisting and is consumed. He's transported to a purple space, where suddenly, a yellow light fills the area. A translucent girl appears and gently touches his face. Aiden feels an overwhelming familiarity. Looking at her, he recognizes her as Alice. Then, an explosion rocks the space. The entity sees Aiden breaking through his own barrier. A notification appears, informing that a new system is being built. The protagonist shouts the word command, then aims at the entity and uses the delete command. The monster feels its body disintegrating and screams, demanding to know how someone who isn't even an operator can have the delete button. At that moment, Aiden gains an administrator-level passive ability called Wall of Fire. Aiden declares that he'll rid himself of the power that tried to consume him. Meanwhile, all the NPCs in the underground city and Urzj village are surrounded by a defensive light, created by Aiden. He tells them that now he can safely destroy the virus. Suddenly, the entity starts laughing. Aiden asks what's so funny. The virus reveals that it's finally found someone worth dueling. Aiden is the one they've been looking for all along. It promises that one day the hero will belong to it. After that, the virus disintegrates into the air. Sirius approaches, asking if Aiden is okay. Aiden responds affirmatively. The dragon comments that the boy is truly amazing, even capable of using the delete option. Sirius adds that he never thought he'd feel so useless. Since the system stopped working, he's been powerless. It's even shameful to bear the title of guardian deity in this situation. But, he says, it's good that everything's over. He decides to destroy the foreign body left by the deity before it can turn into something dangerous. The dragon rushes toward the bug's remains with power in his hand, intending to destroy it. But as he gets close, the dragon is pierced through every part of his body. Both Aiden and Siri look horrified. The entity takes form again, taunting that Sirius must have forgotten that its skill is production and self-replication. Aiden, now armed with a gun, rushes to cut the wires piercing the dragon's body. The guardian falls to the ground, and Siri hurries over to check on him. Aiden grits his teeth, wondering how the virus is still alive when he's sure it was deleted. The bug laughs, calling him a fool. It multiplies into several smaller bugs, warning Aiden that he's been deleted several times before and no one can get rid of it unless they're at the moderator level. Aiden tries again to destroy it, using the delete command on the clones, but the virus laughs again, saying that Aiden won't stand a chance. Determined, Aiden grabs another sword from his space, but it breaks almost immediately. He realizes there's no point in improving his weapons, as they don't fare well against creatures that aren't from the game. After countless battles and broken equipment, the monster asks if Aiden isn't tired. Aiden takes a deep breath, knowing there's no way to destroy it. For some reason, the bug keeps multiplying. The virus then decides it's tired of playing and says it will swallow the problem all at once. Aiden is once again enveloped by the purple aura, but he tries to resist. The entity tells him it's useless and that he must accept his fate. Meanwhile, Siri is still trying to help Sirius. She promises to heal him with magic, but the dragon says it's impossible, and Siri knows it. Desperately, she begins to cry. Sirius reveals that he doesn't have much time left and will likely turn into a virus soon. He tells Siri to stay away or she'll be in danger. Siri cries, saying it's not fair, especially since he'd just been given a second chance at life. Sirius apologizes and places his hand over his chest, asking her to use this power to help Aiden. As the protagonist is still enveloped by the bug and weakening, he suddenly remembers something. He grabs the hammer he got from Alice. It's the only piece of equipment that hasn't broken. The hammer radiates an unknown power. Aiden wastes no time and activates the delete command. When the hammer strikes the monster, an explosion occurs. The virus screams, asking how this is possible, since only those authorized by a moderator can wield such a weapon. Aiden hadn't expected to be able to use a command on the hammer either. Regardless, the virus is still alive and mocks him, saying that his luck isn't enough. Just then, a system notification appears, informing Aiden that he's received a reward. Aiden is shocked when he sees that it's Sirius's star. He looks back to see Siri crying, her hand raised, asking him to use it. Aiden agrees, activating the power of the star in the hammer, then strikes the virus again. This time, the bug screams in pain as it begins to reform. It stares at Aiden, who is now holding an incredibly powerful sword, and says it's the first time it's seen something like this. The system identifies the equipment as Aiden's exclusive execution sword. The bug feels itself being broken in half and realizes it can no longer create clones. It wonders how this is possible, since only administrators and Trojans could destroy it. Aiden keeps swinging the sword, pushing forward. The virus retreats, saying it thought it could take Aiden whole, but now it will have to destroy him. It spreads a powerful bug throughout the area, blaming Aiden for it all. If he had accepted his fate from the start, none of this would have happened. Aiden focuses on his next attack. He selects the delete command and his sword glows red. He charges, cutting through the virus's spell with all his strength. This time, the entity has no chance against Aiden. It's destroyed in an instant, the attack so powerful that it lifts all the stones from the top of the underground village. Aiden collapses to the ground, exhausted. Meanwhile, deep within the bad sector, a figure feels one of his clones has been lost. He remarks that it was probably deleted by an operator or an old guard. Curious about how his clone's last moments unfolded, he decides to check. An image of Aiden holding the sword appears before him. The white-haired man says the boy could be of use to him. The photo seems interesting, and he's intrigued by Aiden's potential. This man, also a virus, is known as Worm. He turns to the side and asks if Trojan shares his thoughts about the boy. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a fire that consumes the area. Worm tries to understand what happened, but an explosion tears through the body of the virus. It laughs, saying that an unexpected visitor has arrived. In front of him appears a girl, consumed by flames and responsible for the attack. The virus quickly recognizes her, Mia. Very angry, Mia says she finally found him. He's been hiding so well. The place continues to be ravaged by fire. Worm disappears and reappears behind Mia, asking how she knew where he was. But he dismisses it, saying it's not important. He warns her that she made a mistake coming here without an administrator and adds that she's underestimating her power. Mia thinks back to when Arya approached her that day. Arya had told her where Worm was. She said she sensed the presence of the virus in the bad sector. At the time, Mia hadn't fully believed it, but she decided to see for herself. Now, she feels like a failure as an operator for not having figured out the virus's location sooner. Still, she's encouraged by the fact that she's the only one who can destroy it. Suddenly, Mia shoots, attacking Worm with fire. The virus quickly defends itself and counters with a swarm of bugs. Mia is ensnared by wires and can't move. The bugs advance and form a large ball, trapping her inside. Worm mocks her, saying that's why she should have brought at least one old guard with her. But then, the ball explodes, and when the virus looks for Mia, she's gone. He scans the area, and suddenly, a blue light strikes him. Worm is thrown back with great force. Mia appears, much stronger than before, and asks, who should be underestimated now? She makes it clear that this time, she will delete him once and for all. The scene shifts to Sirius, who is slowly being erased. Sirius cries as he says goodbye. He starts to remember how he got here. In the past, he was just a white dragon imprisoned by the administrator. He didn't understand why innocent people were being erased by the one who should protect them. Sirius recalls that his mission, given by the administrator, was to protect people. So he asks himself, why has the administrator changed so much? Sirius saw through the man's mask and realized he was laughing. It was hard for the dragon to accept that the administrator found joy in the despair of others. The administrator explains that the more the system updates, the more viruses appear. He can no longer allow them to roam freely. That day, the administrator decided to imprison Sirius forever, seeing him as a threat to the system. So the dragon was blocked. Years passed, and Sirius gave up on his angelic appearance. He was convinced he couldn't change anything. But one day, a little girl appeared. He soon noticed several humans who kept their distance in fear. Over time, Sirius realized that the villagers didn't care about him. They used him as a tourist attraction to make money. But the little girl made sure to feed him and keep him company. Sirius asked her if she had a family. She said no. So, he decided to take care of her. He named her Siri. The girl celebrated, happy to stay with him. As the days went by, Sirius noticed that she was different from other NPCs. She had a natural talent for magic and learned protection methods quickly. But still, Siri was human, and the dragon knew he couldn't keep her with him forever. When she became a teenager, he sent her to a human village. She adapted well there. After that, Sirius felt his mission was complete, but he was happy to have spent so much time with her. His happiness didn't last long, though, because the virus appeared again. The dragon could feel the power of the monster and, with all his anger, broke the chains that had bound him. He wasted no time and went in search of Siri. The system warned him that if he left his area, he would receive no assistance. Meanwhile, the virus carefully observed the village. When it sensed the operators knew of its appearance, it decided to retreat. But the dragon managed to break the blockade and emerged in front of the virus. However, the monster had already activated teleportation. Sirius asked if the virus was responsible for this. The virus laughed, saying he was too late. Everyone was already infected, but it would leave something different in Sirius. That day, the dragon was cursed with a new mark on his chest. The virus said its goodbyes, promising it would find him and asking not to be deleted until then. The monster disappeared. The operators, knowing the virus was active and many were already infected, launched an emergency inspection to delete all the bugs. The dragon received a system message about the inspection and knew he had to act fast to save the villagers. He declared that he couldn't lose Siri and activated the teleportation system over the village. The scene shifts back a few years to when Sirius was just a baby dragon. The administrator gave him his name and tasked him with protecting lost people. This mission was Sirius's purpose throughout his life. Back to the present, we see the administrator watching two NPCs. Meanwhile, the protagonist manages to use Crab's teleportation magic to bring everyone Sirius protected to his village. Aiden thanks Sirius for helping them arrive without any issues. He reassures them that they'll be safe in Urzj village, just a little further ahead. At that moment, Siri calls Aiden, thanking him for bringing everyone. If not for him, they would have all been deleted. But Siri also wants to thank Aiden for deleting Sirius. She says her father would have become a virus, and that would have been the worst possible fate. She thanks Aiden for freeing her father from that fate. Siri also says that everyone is willing to serve him. A system notification then pops up, informing Aiden that Siri and 50 other people have been registered as residents of Urzj village. Aiden is happy to have their support. They continue walking toward the village. Curious, Aiden asks Siri what the Sirius star was. She replies that she doesn't fully understand it, but believes it's the source of the dragon's power. It was the most precious thing Sirius had. Aiden realizes how powerful it must have been because that's what helped raise his moderator level. Without the power of the star, he would never have defeated that virus. Just then, Siri announces that they've arrived in the village. Someone asks if this is his village. Aiden confirms, saying it just needs some renovations. The village residents approach, celebrating Aiden's return. They tell him they've been waiting for him. Aiden asks if they knew he was coming back. Jake replies, yes, someone arrived earlier to warn them. The protagonist is surprised by this and, just then, someone jumps onto his shoulders. Aiden looks back and sees Arya smiling, happily celebrating his return. But suddenly, Arya's tone changes. She says she was worried but promises she won't leave him alone again.